afternoon, and I'm here with another very special person, Walt Clark, whose family's been in town for quite a while, and he's got quite a story to tell us about a special business. So Walt, I'll let you start talking about that lovely family and where it went.
Well, the business was founded in 1885 as a fill-in the wintertime. The farmers had nothing to do in the wintertime. And it came about when my father's brother, Everett B. Clark, lost some kind of a gambling debt to a Mr. Trowbridge in Milford, who had been manufacturing grafting wax for grafting trees and shrubs. For example, you can graft 5 different types of apple trees together, 5 different species, but it was used in Hawaii for propagating the special kind of nuts they grow there. It was used all over the country, and it was a time-consuming, very slow process. You had these huge cast iron heaters. They were wood-fired then, later propane. One would cook it, and you'd transfer it to it, let it cool a little bit. Each had to be molded, half-pound, quarter-pound, 1-pound molds. The molds were very inefficient until I switched them over to aluminum and larger in size. The whole process took hours, and that was only part of the business. Then later on in 1929, my father discovered tree wound dressing. When you cut a limb off a tree, the black emulsion you put on there, basically a 55% asphalt, and he did the rest of the formative. But the problem with that is it froze, and if it froze, it would break down. That was always a hassle till I got into it. And the buildings, you'll see them. There was originally some kind of a building here and a building over here. Eventually, they just tied the two together. The building that was over here, I have no idea what it was. They extended that out, and then they extended this out. And to work in that building was rough on your feet because the wax built up over the years. It was really rough. The barn was used for raw materials, but there were not that many raw materials then. The Orange Police would come in every day because I had a machine for coffee, crackers. Hey, Walt, how are you? Hey, you know that you built the business up, this is years later, why don't you move to the postal? Get a business that looks like a business. I said, we do nothing in this state to speak of. Everything is across the country and export. I'm not trying to, the only thing I do, instead of putting it into a building, I put it into Morgan Stanley. It's got to build money for me, not me spending it for rent. My father, when I took over, he would not retire. He was there till 68 and a half. And I said, you could be on Social Security. Yeah. He said, I'm not going to collect welfare. I can just, so he charged me $1,400 a month rent in 1968, which is now the equivalent, according to Webster Bank, of $5,800 a month for a barn and a shop. And, well, anyway, after having worked at U.S. Motors for 2 years in purchasing, I got to know an awful lot of vendors, an awful lot of suppliers, an awful lot of machine shops. So then I decided to work for my father. He decided to pay me $125 a week.
Nice.
He was grossing, and I'm not going to go into the other figures, but he was grossing $44,000 a year, which is peanuts. And I said, you don't know how to market. I mean, by advertising in the New Haven Yellow Pages means nothing. Right. You've got to get manufacturers' reps. And in order to get manufacturers' reps, I don't mean, they wouldn't make enough carrying our products. Mm-hmm. We're a small company. But allied lines. And when I started out there, the tree coat was shipped in, it was made by Flint Coat, shipped in 55-gallon drums. And they put in a grease pump and you'd crank it. 4 times would be a pint. And then you'd have to backtrack. You'd line up 12 paper labels, paste them, and then put them on one at a time. Output was terrible. And then my former wife's father, who was vice president of a company in Bridgeport and also Massachusetts, said, "Walt, you need a hydraulic pump." I said, "Nothing's going to pump this." He said, "One of our pumps will." And he picked up a used air compressor, a used forklift truck. Oh, he said, "Try this one out." And what a difference. But in the meantime, I had switched over to lithograph cans, 3-color.
What's a lithograph?
Well, with 3 colors already on there,
Okay.
like painted on.
All right.
The basic can was bright yellow. Then I had green and black printing.
Okay.
So they were marketed in half pint, pint, and quart. Flat top, just like a paint can. And that went on for years. I went from that pump, then the volume started picking up. My reps took hold. I was landing big accounts. My biggest one was American Hardware Supply Company, the old Service Star hardware stores,
Nice.
and Cotter and Company, True Value. And they were taking huge shipments. We'd put them on pallets, put them out in the driveway. And the neighbors at one time complained, "You've got a business in a AA residential area." Well, I'm sorry about that, but you'll never kick the Clarks out. So anyway, and then I wanted a brush top to make it easier. If someone has a tree limb, just unscrew it and paint the tree coat on. Now, those had to be fabricated for 49.5 cents each, and I'd buy 25,000 at a time. And I said, there has to be an easier way and a cheaper way. So then I got into plastics. This is recently. Now, I retired in 1997, so this was, let's say, the 80s. So I went from 49.9 to getting, let's say, just a pint-sized plastic for 18.9, 25,000 at a clip. But at that time, I had 4 ounce, 8 ounce, 16 and 32. The half pints, pints, and quarts were either flat top or brush top.
Nice.
And the gallons were all lithographed also. Now, plastic can't be lithographed. It's silk screened. So they only gave us a choice of yellow can, nice green printing. I said, fine. But all this took so much space that the entire barn, all 3 floors, were filled up. And we told the shippers, because it's residential, all these trucks come in between 4 and 5 and get out of here by 5. By that time, we had to get, the shipments were bigger, so we had to get a bigger forklift truck. In the meantime, the barn made quite a transformation, because that was just old wood.
Right.
Johnny Sorensen and I and Bo, we tore the floors up, all the wood floors, where Bill had his garage. We got rid of that. Went over to Grossman's and got a prefab garage, and that's what Cherry uses. Concreted everything so we could drive all through the barn.
Awesome.
You know, and took staircases out and everything else because we had the lift. That everything went really well. When I retired, my son Bo took over, and he was doing fantastically. And on every carton we had a sticker, proudly made in the USA. The grafting wax is made out of pure gum rosin from Georgia. The Trico is made from Venezuelan asphalt plus compounds in this country. The vinyl tree guards were made in this country. The tree wrap you wrap around trees. It's printed Clark's tree wrap. You're supposed to invert the printing when you put it around trees to protect them from damage. Then we had these weed whacker guards for young trees, so when the lawnmowers hit them, they don't damage them. Well, come to find out, Venezuela was having their problems. Now they really do. The gum rosin, they couldn't get the disadvantaged Afro-Americans to tap the gum rosin. So that had to be imported from South America. And then, let's see, the tree wrap had to be made in Canada, the vinyl tree guards in England. So nothing was made here. And the worst part is, I hate to tell you what I paid for tree coat to begin with. It would come in every 3 weeks, 32,000 pounds in 55-gallon drums. Every 3 weeks. I was paying roughly 34 cents a gallon. Bo, when he had to go, Funny dropped out in 2014, he was paying over $3 a gallon, losing on every can of tree coat. So he was boosting up the tree wrap service.
Okay.
And finally, he said, I've got a customer. Now, meantime, I own the registered copyright, trademark, for the tree coat. And he could sell that to this company in New York. They wanted that tree coat registered, the copyright.
Okay.
I said, oh, no, this hurts me.
It does.
I said, here you go, Bo. They sold that for $100 grand.
Good.
And I thought to myself, if he were not in bad shape financially, I would have said, well, let me have half. But I didn't, because my father was so cheap.
Yeah.
He had to know every penny that until I took over. When I started the tree coat thing, I went into hydraulic pumps. And have you ever heard the Newtown bee?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's a godsend.
Sure.
I was looking for a conveyor, roughly a foot wide with a table. I picked up exactly what I wanted, a steel table. I scrounged around. And a lot of this equipment I had to build myself. A machine for heat sealing plastic tubes. I designed and built that. And of course, I knew these machinists. So they did it for next to nothing for me.
Excellent.
Because I treated them well when I was a buyer. And just business picked up gradually. But towards the end, I could see the end coming, because what had been business for years, now Bo had to go to conventions. And what they'd do, he would have to rent a room, hotel room, set up a display, and you had a half hour with each vendor. And this is not like being on the open floor or whatever.
Right.
And and they were expensive. So we just could not make it. And that's it.
Yeah.
But the business lasted 129 years,
Awesome. Awesome.
which is really something.
So when the business was really going, was your company the only one that was supplying tree coat?
No, there are others.
There were others.
Right.
Okay.
There are others, but they're all different.
Right.
Now we had some big account. Agway was a big account.
Awesome.
But the thing that killed Agway, they had a massive plane crash that killed 21 of their executives.
Ooh.
And ever since then, they just tapered right off. The whole company got disheveled.
That's too bad.
Yeah. And other companies, the worst part is, I fought off incorporating for years. But I got sick and tired as a sole proprietor of paying these enormous taxes.
It's hard.
So in 1993, you've heard of Greenpeace.
Yes.
One person from Greenpeace walked into a little garden center somewhere in Delaware.
Yeah.
And of course, these distributors distribute to hardware stores and garden centers and everything else.
Yeah.
Here's Ortho, here's DuPont, here's a little company, Treecoat, Connecticut. He picked up an aerosol can, walked over to a sales clerk 3 feet away, and sprayed him in the eyes.
Ouch.
I was sued for in excess of $1 million. This little company.
Oh my goodness.
And I think Ben took over that account.
Okay.
They sued me personally. They went after the manufacturers of the aerosol can,
Wow.
the aerosol fillers in Massachusetts, the company that even made the push valve,
Oh my goodness.
and of course, My name was on it.
Oh, dear.
And they paid nothing. Finally, the aerosol company paid $5,000. And then the Greenpeace guy was fine, by the way.
Good.
But, you know, the thing is, you had all these little headaches all the time.
Sure. Business is not easy.
And another thing is, I think the thing that saved me was the fact that my father would procrastinate. If somebody wanted a price, well, I'll get back to you, you know. People would call up at American Hardware. Walt, it's January, I need the prices in April.
Yeah.
And I'd have to make up something in 10, 15 minutes and hope I was right. And we had no computers then. And then Bo was getting itchy for computers. I hate them. I hate them. I took mine, once I started losing when I had my eyesight problem, I took mine up and I recycled the whole thing, except for the printer. And I am not a techie. I don't have a smartphone, I have a stupid flip phone.
It's okay.
And-
Make phone calls.
And that's all I need. I'm anti-technology. I'm a lost cause. Lost forever. Boy.
Amazing.
But the thing is, I would work like crazy in the wintertime. I had high school kids, college kids, working nights. And I'd say to them, no drinking, no girls, no drugs, work. And I never had a speck of trouble.
Nice.
Keep track of your hours. I paid them well. And I worked like crazy. But in the summertime, I'd leave Johnny Sorensen and Todd Riker over at the shop. And I had this before cell phones. I had this huge antenna on the barn. And I had a big base station for CB, because that's all I had.
Yeah.
Well, I had marine radio in my cabin cruiser. But I voted for 55 years. But I worked hard in the winter, and you got a nice day, and I'd take off.
You got it.
And I'd be out there in the middle of nowhere. Every boat I had was named Beats Workin', with an apostrophe. Beats Workin'.
Working.
And they'd see me out there fishing, you know. And I took a lot of the orange cops out because they were off during the week.
Sure, sure.
And they thoroughly enjoyed it. Bob Stanky and Blackie and all those. Benny Foyer wanted to go out. We got about 2 miles past Charles Island. And I was up on the bridge with Blackie. And Ben came running out of the cabin. And Blackie said, I forgot to tell you, Benny gets seasick. Hey, you know what you need, Ben? You need a veal Parmesan grinder. So I had to turn around and head back in.
Bad.
I had to head back in.
Oh,
But they all thought at the boatyard that I was a playboy.
yeah.
Because I'm there all in the summertime, nice day. And then I picked up another bad habit. I joined a flying club.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh yeah. And well, ever since Ted flew up,
Okay.
my sister's late husband was the first American astronaut who was killed. Apollo astronaut Ted Freeman.
Oh,
But when he was at Annapolis, he'd fly up in a J-3 Piper Cub.
wow.
And of course I bugged him to fly. And my friend Hank Barkley, who was a fellow businessman, was flying since World War II. So I got into the flying club. It was owned by Avco Lycoming.
Okay, yeah.
The flying time. Is it okay if I get away from business and talk about this?
Well, this is your life. This is what you've been doing.
That plane, there were 2 Cherokees, 140 and a 180. So we would fly. Hank would call up and say, Walt, do you want to break away for lunch? I said, sure. Meet me at Sikorsky Airport. Suppose at that time, Bridgeport. Where do you want to go? Block, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, 45 minutes up, 45 minutes back. We only got charged wet time at $9 an hour.
Oh,
Wet time means only when that propeller's turning.
wow.
It's not like you rent a car and you pay hourly. So we'd leave at 11, get back around 5, walk around the island. But if I were being charged dry time, so this for going up there for the day, 45 minutes, hour and a half, $13.50.
That was cheaper than the ferry.
Oh, you're darn right it was. And without the traffic hassles going up to it.
Nice.
But the only trouble is Hank wanted that plane so hot, and I didn't. I wanted ventilation. Oh, and you get tired of the drone.
Yeah.
And I was not rated, I was only rated VFR, Visual Flight Rules, where he was instrument.
Nice.
But I gave it up after about 10, 12 years because I couldn't drop anchor, have a cocktail, and throw a fishing line over.
No, it's kind of hard to do if you're flying a plane. Definitely. Well, you should have gotten a stewardess or something.
But, you know, the thing is, by getting out there in the water, and I was always in contact,
Right, right.
thanks to the CB,
Yeah,
always in contact with, I'd call in every couple hours.
good.
It
All right.
could-
Well, I have to ask you, what was your handle?
I didn't even have a handle.
You didn't have a handle?
Because the only time I used it is when I call the office.
Okay.
I hate those darn things. I think of Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Back in the day, with those CBs and stuff, everybody had to have a handle.
Oh,
You had to
no.
have a name, and that was the way we communicated before we had the cell phones.
Well, you know the darndest thing, now when they first came out with cell phones, the first one I had was in a briefcase,
Oh, right.
5 watt, and it had a full handset. And you'd carry it around like a briefcase. Take it down to the boat. You didn't have to do that stupid antenna on their car or truck or whatever.
Right.
And then they improved them to 3 watt, smaller briefcase. Then they had a Motorola gray thing with an antenna you pulled up. Then they had a smaller thing with an antenna. But I always had to be on top of the latest. But then I was anti-computer.
Interesting.
And I talked to a friend of mine I was in college with, who's got 4 degrees. Drives me nuts with his stocks. All he talks about is stocks. And I tell him it's as bad as watching paint dry, listening to you. So anyway, he's anti-technology. And I realize I'm way behind the times. But I don't care. What I don't know won't hurt me.
That's it. That's it.
Oh,
Well, Walt, let me just ask and finish up with just one simple question. You've been in Orange all your life.
yes.
Has it been a good town to live in?
It's been an excellent town.
Yeah.
Excellent. I have absolutely no complaints.
Awesome.
None.
Awesome.
I noticed when I remember when the population was either 12 or 1,300, and I could hunt all over the place. And I stopped hunting, by the way. I was with Bob Gimler, the Orange police officer. And that's, we got through about noon, went back in the house, and that's when Bill O'Sullivan called up from WELI.
Yeah.
And he said, Walt, I got this from Associated Press about your sister's husband. And when Ted was killed, it's the last time I hunted.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I've had a pistol permit for 60 years. I don't carry.
Right.
The only time I carry, if I have to go to New Haven, where my son teaches boxing, the only time I'll strap on a .38.
Yeah.
But it's not me that's killing these people. It's these availability of guns and the crime. The whole country is not like it was.
It's true.
I loved it in the 50s.
Yes, I agree.
The television shows, there was no profanity.
Yeah.
There was a darn thing, just ideal home life. You had a husband, a wife, a boy, a girl, and a dog. And that made the perfect homestead.
Yeah.
Now it's unreal.
Yeah.
Totally unreal.
As they say, times do change. They really do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm just so thrilled that you came over. I really am. Didn't know about you flying. I think that's a real interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I'd known. I would have taken your flight instead of the ferry. But really.
The only place I didn't like was flying into Block.
Yeah. It's a
Block has one runway and a crosswind, and you have to crab. You know what crabbing is?
Yes, I do.
And you'd crab that little Cherokee in like this,
Oh,
and you get down to about 4 feet, then straighten the rudder, and boom, down you go.
yeah. It's not fun. Not fun.
You're darn right.
But no, it's a good place. But your business really, I mean, it was always an icon in town.
Oh yes,
And,
oh yes.
And I know my grandfather grafted one of the apple trees down and back. And the thing in the spring was the funniest thing to look at because it had all these different blossoms
Yes,
popping
yeah,
out.
yeah. Another thing, that tapered the sales of grafting wax off. Do you remember Oregon and Washington State were Big Apple states?
Mm-hmm.
And then something came out, ALAR. ALAR. The idea with ALAR was to prolong the shelf life of apples.
Oh, okay.
But all of a sudden, people stopped grafting and everything else. Also, the art of grafting is an art.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've recently come up with mechanical devices.
Oh.
And where you'd have to buy, Bo would have grafting tape made, especially in Massachusetts, made out of deliberately cheap cotton that would rot in a year.
Exactly. What you need.
Well, then, and those sold for like $4.95 a roll. Then people said, "Oh, the heck with this! I can go to the Dollar Tree store and buy 2 rolls of black electrician's tape,
Yeah.
and just take it off. It'll rot anyway. It's cheap enough.
Right.
It's thin enough." But
Didn't do the trick.
we had so many good years that the past couple that Bo had to contend with, it sort of balanced out
Well,
because everything worked out well in the end.
good. That's the bottom line.
Oh
Very
yes,
good.
oh yeah.
Well, and I'm glad to see you, and I hope you're going to participate in some of our activities that we've got going on for the 200.
Well, the worst part, I will.
Good.
The worst part is this darn eye.
I know.
I didn't expect. It's hard to read,
Yeah,
and with that macular degeneration.
it is. It is. Well, if you need a ride or anything, call me. Okay?
Well, I limit my driving.
Yeah.
Now, days like this, I don't like. I take days that are cloudy,
Mm-hmm. All right.
usually.
All right. Well, on a cloudy day, you need a ride.
I think you're busy enough.
Oh no, this is a fun project to do, and I think that'll stop, and then I'll have plenty of time.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you kindly.
For coming. I really mean it, and we'll work on this and stuff, and we'll show
All right, fine.
show you how it looks, and I think you'll be surprised.
And I hope they're through fixing the barn, fixing the shop where the maple tree hit it.
Good, because and we'll give you a call. Probably,
Yeah.
I would think in a couple of months when it dries up,
Hmm.
we'll give you a call and meet you over there. And,
Fine.
And have a little poke around. Which
Sounds
would be
good.
Great.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Very
And thank you.
kindly.
Thank you.